Hey guys, welcome back. So I shot an intro video to this car, explaining the background and what I'm doing here. So this is the first video of actually tearing the car down. The only thing I did was disconnect the battery, which was at the end of that intro video, which I'm sure everybody can figure out on their own. If not, you can go back into that intro. So the first thing I'm going to do here is we're going to be taking the heads off this car, taking the timing chain cover off, getting that deep into this engine. The cam's coming out, which if you can see, there's not enough room to pull the cam out with the radiator. So I'm gonna drain the fluids. I'm gonna drain the engine oil, and I'm gonna drain the antifreeze. All right, so I got the engine oil draining. Also have coolant draining. What I like to do is get a clean jug. I save the windshield washer fluid jugs because they're alcohol. It'll evaporate completely and you'll have a nice clean jug. So I just put them to the side every time I empty one. Hook a hose up the right diameter to this valve right here. So it's just nice and clean. It's easy to get rid of it after. I don't know if everybody's familiar with these valves, but when you go to first turn it, it's kind of hard to turn, and it comes out pretty far with just like a quarter turn, and that valve slides out quite a bit. So you feel like you're gonna break it, but you won't, or you shouldn't, I should say. And make sure you have the cap off. If you don't have the radiator cap off, you can have that valve open all day and you're not really gonna get anything out of it. Just take a quick peek underneath the car, just to show you guys it's all stock exhaust. And like I said before, this resonator, they had cut the bags off the stock mufflers right there. And I just bought these tails and just stuck these tails on there. This was a couple of years ago. I'm not really sure if I'm gonna keep them or not, but we'll see. Before I lower the car, I'm gonna get that lower radiator hose off and the transmission cooling lines. I don't know if you've ever popped these off before. Let's see if I can get a picture of it. It's got that black plastic cap. You pop that off, just get a thin blade screwdriver behind it. You'll pop that off. Here's the other side. And when that's out of the way, you're gonna see a retaining clip inside the groove right where my finger is. I just put that small flat blade screwdriver, pushed it forward, and then you can pull that clip out of the way. And now that clip's out, you can rock this line. I usually just pop it out of its holder, rock it back and forth a little bit. There's an O-ring in there making the seal. And then when you pop that off, you're gonna get some more fluid out of it, so get a pan. So I'm gonna take those two lower lines off, the lower radiator hose, and then lower the car and start working up top. Quick tip, when you pop these off, they'll keep dripping. If you don't wanna make a huge mess, I just use vacuum caps. So I'll pop one on here, and then I'll just put one in backwards and shove it right inside of the radiator just to stop it from leaking. I do that on both sides, so when you go to pull the radiator out, you're gonna end up tilting it one way or the other, and you're gonna get more fluid, so it just helps with the mess. All right, I got the car down. I'm gonna take out the cold air intake, unplug the mass airflow sensor, just start making some room in the to get the front accessory drive off. I'm gonna pull the coolant fans, then the radiator, and then start working on the top end. All right, so I got the cold air intake out of the way, upper lower radiator hoses, transmission coolant lines are disconnected. I'm gonna take the radiator out with the coolant fans. It's just two 10mm bolts up top. Disconnected the harness for the fans, just tuck that off to the side. Pulled the vent line off the radiator, tuck that off to the side. All these rubber lines I'm gonna replace. The car's 14 years old and has over 100,000 miles on it. So it just makes sense to replace them now while I'm into it. The lower, this is an automatic. So the transmission cooler lines, those are all capped. And the oil cooler lower line, there's a T for the radiator hose. I took it off at the bottom so that it would drain, and I actually got quite a bit of coolant out of it. So before you pull the upper hoses, I'd pull that lower one just to keep the mess down. So next I'm gonna pull the radiator fans out, and then I'm gonna start disconnecting the heater hoses and just start working on the top end. So I did end up having to take the fan off the radiator to get it out. I was struggling just with room. And another thing, just wanted to point out, these tabs right here on the evaporator, there's a 13 millimeter bolt on the backside that bolts to the top of the radiator. So you gotta take those two out, and at the bottom, maybe you can see it better on this side, that little stub right there, the end of the tank for the evaporator, you have to, the condenser, you have to lift that up out of the radiator and then kick the bottom of the radiator out on both sides to clear the condenser. So that stub actually goes down inside of a pocket on the radiator. So the condenser has to come up and then kick the radiator out. Here's the radiator and fans on the bench. Let me turn this light on. So this, like I said, the fans I unbolted, 10 millimeter bolts, and on the back side of the radiator, that's where the condenser's bolted to. And see that little like horseshoe? That's where that tank goes down inside of the condenser. So you gotta pull that condenser up, and then you can pick the radiator up enough so that the bottom of the radiator where it sits in the frame will come out of that pocket, and then you can kick it out. All right, so I disconnected the heater core hoses. Both lowers are off. I was planning on just removing them when I got the heads and intake off, but for now I just flopped them to the side. I'm up in the air whether or not I'm gonna replace them. I mean, they're 14 years old, over 100,000 miles. Now's probably time to do so. So most likely when I get the heads off and the intake off, I'll end up replacing those hoses so it doesn't bite me later. Another thing I'm gonna do before I get too into it, taking the front accessory drives off and flopping some stuff to the side. Down below for the condenser, this bolt here, that bolt there, I'm gonna take those off because you need room to slide the cam out. The condenser's in the way. You take those out, you can actually pick the condenser right up and then just flop it out of the way to have enough room to be able to slide the cam out. So I'm gonna unbolt that, and then I'm gonna start getting the top end off, getting the intake off. So I'm gonna do each valve cover. I'll get the coil pack brackets off, disconnect the fuel injection, the harness. All that stuff's pretty straightforward. Just take your time. Take a lot of pictures while it's together. That's what I do. And any bolts or nuts that you can screw right back on after you take them off and the parts are moved, I also do that, so I don't have to bag everything. I just put the nut and the bolt right back where it came from. And then the fuel line, that one's pretty self-explanatory too. If you've never messed with these before, you just gotta pop this up. And then you can pull it out. I'll usually take it and just put it on backwards so I don't lose it. And then I'll show you the fuel line tool that I use. So I just got this from O'Reilly's a while back, and I just put it right back in the container so I don't lose them. But AC fuel line disconnect set. It's just a cheap plastic set. It works really good. I like that it just has a hole to go back on so I don't lose it. But that's the part number right there, WB83101. So I'll use that and slide that right underneath, just like the picture. It slides right underneath the, there's like a garter spring inside. So if you push the fuel line tighter, you put the fuel line tool inside and push hard, you'll feel it get under that spring. And then while the tool's still in there, you pull the whole fuel line right off. That's that. I'm gonna start getting this top end off, and how about it? All right, so just a quick one on this fuel line tool if you guys never messed with this before. So this is a 3/8 9.5 millimeter. It does both. It's got some wiggle room. So what you do is you just snap it on over the hard line, and then what I do is push forward here, and then you can push the tool right underneath, and then you can pop the line right off. And dump fuel all over the valve cover like I just did. So put a rag underneath. All right, so I got some stuff out of the way. I got the coil packs off. I got the all the wiring harness that could get out of the way. That's out of the way. I have the fuel lines, supply and return flopped off to the side with the heater core hoses. The passenger side ground wire on the back of the head is a pain to get to because I have the JRE transmission dipstick tube, and it actually lands right in front of it. So I was able to pry it over out of the way, get that out. The driver's side ground, that's a different story. That one's really hard to get to. And you need to get that out to be able to flop the harness all the way to the passenger side to get the heads off without having them in the way. But if you take the intake off, you'll be able to get to that ground wire. So that's my next step, is to get the intake out of the way. Then I'll finish up the wiring harness, get that out of the way. And then I'll start taking the front accessory drive off, the crank pulley, and valve covers, heads. Like I said, this is an L99 automatic that I'm converting basically to an LS3, doing the DOD delete, VVT delete. So I gotta get the heads off to get to the lifters, which over 100,000, and the power I'm hoping to make with this, it's not a bad idea to replace the lifters regardless if it started off as an LS3 or not. I'll just give you a quick look at the coils. If you've ever taken these off there, all you gotta do is take that center plug off. You don't have to undo all the wiring to each individual coil. They come right off as one unit, which is pretty nice. All right, got the intake off. As you can see, I blew out what I could, but in between the runners, you could tell that there was some mice making nests in here. Or maybe just road debris pushing itself up under there. But I know this car lived outside before I bought it, so I'm guessing it's a mouse nest. But as you can see with the intake off, a lot of this harness you can now get to. And then that ground wire that's in the back of the head is this guy right here. So I'll be able to get that off a lot easier. And another tip is the hose in the back of the intake that goes to the brake booster. That's where I would disconnect it. It was pretty easy just to pop it off right there and take the intake off with the hose still on it. I'll go show you the intake, what I'm talking about. So this guy right here. So trying to get your hand behind there to get that clamp off, you're better off just taking it off at the booster. Then you can tuck it in here. These last two bolts you can't get out, so you pick them up the best you can while you're finagling this guy out of there. Moving on. All right, made some more progress. So the intake we already had off. I started on the driver's side, got the exhaust manifold out of the way. If you have a like a 3/8 air ratchet, if you have access to air, or I know everything's electric now with the Milwaukees, that'll be your friend taking those out. I use the air ratchet to zip all the bolts out. The two studs straight down for the exhaust manifold you can get from up top, and they come out, well, they came out pretty easy for me. That's probably the way to go. Get the manifold right out of the way so you're not wrestling the head off with the manifold pressing against the head. Not only that, I'm putting long tube headers on it when I'm putting it back together, so they had to come off anyway. I got the water pump off. Got that out of the way. I'm gonna do the power steering next, the alternator, and that'll give me all the access I need to get to that timing cover. Actually, now that I'm looking at it, the alternator might not even have to get out of the way. I could probably just take this idler off. But we'll see as I keep digging in here. Most of the harness that went from the passenger side to the driver's side, I was able to flop that over, and there's only 2 more connections for that harness. But as I take the power steering pump off, I'll have easier access getting to it. And one of them's for the cam sensor, and the other one's for the VVT, which is all going to be deleted. But as I take components off, it'll be easier to get to those connectors, so why fight them? When I have all the front accessories off, I'm probably, before I take off the timing chain cover, I'm probably gonna take the heads off, so if any debris falls from up above, it won't go down into the oil pan. So that's the plan. I'll get the front drives off, get it to the point where I can take the timing cover off, and then I'll take the heads off, then I'll take the timing cover off after I clean up top. All right, so I got both manifolds off. I took the power steering bracket off with the pump, flopped it over to the side. It does look like the alternator, I can leave it there, get the timing chain cover off, but we'll see. I had a really hard time with the passenger side getting that manifold off. The dipstick will not come out. It's moving around like it's barely even in there, and I can't get it out. So I ended up having to use some shears and just cut the bracket off to get the exhaust manifold up and out. And I'm gonna deal with that when I get the head off. I'll have some room to get down to the tube, and I'm gonna try putting I got a tiny pipe wrench to try to rock it back and forth. I don't want to break the bottom off in the pan. If I do that, I'm just gonna yank the motor out. I was contemplating yanking the motor out from the beginning of this. Last time I did a DOD delete was actually on my wife's Yukon, and I just yanked the motor out, and I ended up finding all kinds of other issues that I took care of while the motor was out. But I figured this one I would do it in the car. There's a lot more room. The car's lower to the ground. It's easier to work on. But if I break that the piece from the O-ring down into the oil pan and it's in the pan, then I'm just going to yank the motor. But for now, I'm going to take the valve covers off. I'll take the rockers off. The rockers are going to get tossed with the push rods. I have all new ones. I haven't bought the rockers yet. I'm in between doing the trunnion upgrade myself or just buying them already loaded. Like I said, with my wife's truck, I just bought them from Michigan Motorsports with the trunnion kit installed already. It's like an extra $100. So, I mean, it's time consuming. I've done them myself. It takes a little while to break them down, press out the old bearings, and then put the trunnion kit in. So I'm leaning towards just buying them already done, spending the extra $100. But get the valve covers off. I'm gonna get the heads off, the valley pan, and then I'll do another update. And then after that, I'll take the timing chain cover off. All right, so good news. I was able to get the oil dipstick tube out. I ended up soaking it in penetrating fluid overnight. And with the heads off, I was able to get a small pipe wrench on it and keep twisting it and rocking it back and forth. And eventually it popped out. And even when it popped, I thought for sure it was broken. But I was able to get the whole piece out. I'm gonna have to replace it anyway because I cut the mounting tab off, and the pipe wrench, I mean, destroyed the tube from rocking it back and forth. But so I got lucky there. That was good. I got the heads off, like I said. The next thing is the timing chain cover. Really up in the air whether or not to yank this motor out at this point. I think I'm going to. I just have a couple concerns. I've done lifters on LS3s before without pulling the cam. So with the cam not coming out, I got it down to this point, replace the lifters, clean the decks, and put it back together without any issue. But in this situation, with the timing chain cover coming off, pulling the cam out, so my two concerns are the cam hitting the condenser, and I've seen videos with people racking these things over. I already tried picking it up and twisting it, and I got to the point where I feel like I'm gonna damage the lines and the system's gonna end up evacuating in my garage. That's a concern, and the other concern is I'm replacing the oil pump. So I have to get to those 2 lower bolts anyway, which looks like a treat inside the car, but I have to be able to lower it too. So I gotta lower the oil pan anyway, and at that point I kinda wanna replace the gasket, just because if there's any grit that gets between that gasket lowering it, I can't really see it when I go to lift it back up and torque it back down and just afraid of having an oil leak after. That's the second issue. The third is doing both motor mounts. I'm putting ZL1 motor mounts in it, so I have to take the motor mounts off anyway. And I'm just waiting to hear back from Don at Slowhawk to see if I should use the stock converter with the BTR Stage 2 or replace the converter. This car's kind of an all-around car. I want to be able to use it at the track and the strip, which is, I know, kind of impossible. You got to set up either way, but if I can get away with the stock converter, that'll be good for daily driving and for the track. I mean, for the road course. It won't be so good at quarter mile, but I mean, I'm lucky if I bring the thing once or twice up to Epping to drag race it. And it won't come out of the hole as hard as it could, but it'll still be fun. So all I have left to do is the bell housing bolts and torque converter bolts, motor mount bolts, and this thing's basically ready to come out. And then when it's out in the open. It's very easy to work on to make sure everything's clean. I also want to look at that oil cooler. I can see some seepage. Can't really see it in the camera, but I guess they're prone to leaking, and it looks like it is leaking. So I want to be able to look at that really well. It's just nice when it's out in the open, you know. I got this one sitting here. I mean, it's a 3.8 for this Mustang, but every time I get to the point where I gotta take heads off, timing chain cover off, you gotta drop the oil pan, the motor comes out. I mean, that's just kind of been my rule of thumb. I have the shop to do it, I have the tools to do it. And then when I take video with it out of the car, it might actually be better to shoot the video, and actually you can see what I'm looking at, you know. It's like the oil cooler. I'll be able to get a good video of that. So I think I've made up my mind. I'm gonna start working on getting this motor out, and the whole process will be the same as if it was in the car, except you'll be able to see it better with it out on the stand. Another thing, whether you do this in the car or not, I would just take the hood off. I ended up taking the hood off last night. It took me 10 minutes. It's super light. My wife helped me pick it up. I just marked the bolts really good on the hinge on the hood, and it's night and day how much easier I can see. And reaching down in there, taking the heads off would have been a lot easier if I just popped the hood off. So I would just take that off. But yeah, it's the next step. I'm gonna get this motor out, get it on the stand, and then take it from there. So one more thing before I start working on getting the motor out, I just wanted to show you guys the importance with, especially the L99 with the AFM, with the higher oil pressures, the importance of changing the oil. So the guy I bought this car off of said he religiously changed the oil 3,000 to 5,000 miles, even though it's recommended to go higher. I've always done it at 3. I know that's overkill, it's old school, but with the DOD and the higher pressure, you want that cleaning agent. That cleaning agent comes out of that oil so fast. The viscosity will still be there, but you really need that cleaner to dump the varnish out and any of the grit out of the oil galleys and out of these lifters. I think that's why they're prone to failing also. But if you look inside this head, this has 112,000 miles on it right now. I mean, it looks virtually new. That's the stock valve cover. I haven't cleaned any of this yet. I mean, it's in really, really good shape. Here's the other head. Same thing, there's no buildup anywhere. That's the driver's side valve cover. I mean, it's really clean. And my wife's truck was the same way, 5.3. All the rockers look good, push rods. My wife's truck has 210,000 miles on it. And I did the DOD delete at 210,000 miles. I'm planning on getting another 100,000 out of it. And it was virtually the same way as this. A little bit more baked on oil because we drove it for about, I don't know, 100,000 miles with the AFM. But once I deleted that with the Range Technologies plugin, it was much better. I mean, the oil consumption went down, the mileage didn't change at all, and so going those other 100,000 miles with the consistent oil changes, it virtually looked just like this does. All the lifters look good. That one actually has a little bit of scoring. It'll be interesting when I get the cam out. I don't know if you can see that. All right. Oh, one more thing. I do have two broken. That one was broken for a while. I heard that ticking for, I don't know, well over a year now. And then I have one on the backside that I actually broke when I was taking it off. So I'll show you how I get those off. I just weld a nut to them and then put a socket on it and take them out. All right, motor's out. I got it on the stand. It definitely took a little bit more than I was initially thinking, but I'm still glad I went forward with getting it out because, like I said before, it's right here. It's out in the open. It'll be a lot easier for me to clean all these surfaces. I can drop the pan, take a look inside, replace the oil pump. I have no problem with the pickup tube and the O-ring for the pickup tube, and I'm replacing the oil pump. So I think it's the way to go. That's just me. I did run into a few snags. I had a really hard time getting the transmission to separate from the engine. Both dowel pins being steel with the aluminum, there was a ton of oxidation in between them. So I had to, I kept soaking them, trying to rock it back and forth, trying to pry on it, obviously without trying to crack the bell housing. Everything's aluminum. But what ultimately ended up helping was with the penetrating fluid in there, I heated up the bell housing itself. You can almost see where the heat is around where the dowel pin is. And as I was doing that, I mean, I didn't go crazy. I used MAP gas, but I wasn't trying to shoot for cherry red. I could actually hear it pop. Then I went and did the other side, that popped, and I could just barely push on it with my hands, and I could see that it was separated. So if you ever have a hard time pulling your transmission out, that's most likely what it is. This car's 14 years old. Before I bought it, it wasn't garage, so there is oxidation. There is some surface rust here and there. So those were my battles. Getting the exhaust out of the way, getting those slip collars off. I had to cut them off. So a lot of little things were getting me. But all in all, I still haven't evacuated the AC. I don't have to worry about pulling the cam out and really racking the condenser over to get the cam out. And it's so easy to nick a cam bearing, taking the cam out and putting it in. I really didn't want the hassle, so I can clean this up now. I have good access to the engine mounts. Like I said, I'm gonna put a ZL1 mount in it. I actually already did the driver's side. I'm gonna put the driver's side now on the passenger side and put the brand new mount back on the driver's side. That's the one that sees all the torque, you know, when the motor lifts up to the passenger side when you're hammering it. So I'll put all the part numbers in. Like I said, it's in one of these other shots. I'll lay it all out, all the part numbers I've used, all the parts I used, and how much I paid for them. But now we're just gonna basically clean up the shop, get all my tools away, and start all over again with the disassembly of the engine, and clean it all up and get it reassembled. And I'll take some shots of whatever I feel is important. Here's that oil cooler, which that plug right above it was pretty difficult to get out. I don't know how you could get that out with the manifold in the way. Probably next to impossible. All right, I'm gonna stop breaking this thing down. I'm gonna get the timing chain cover off and the valley pan. All right, so I got it all broken down, like usual. I mean, these motors come apart pretty quick, pretty easy. I mean, they go together easy too. What I have left is just cleaning all the decks, getting all the new parts out, which I'll have all the new parts laid out in the next video. The next part, I'm gonna make this a part 1 teardown, and then part 2, everything will be clean. I'll have all the parts laid out on the table with the part numbers and how much it cost me for everything, so you can get an idea of what this conversion is gonna cost you. But this motor, I'm happy with the motor, like the heads and the valve covers. You look down into the valley area, it looks spotless. I haven't cleaned anything. It's in really good shape. There's no oil built up anywhere, any crud or anything like that. The cylinders do have some carbon buildup. I mean, I blame that on the DOD. The cam bearings look like they're in awesome shape. I'm not going to do anything there. They're all in really good shape, to be honest with you. So I'm not gonna do anything with the cam bearings. I am replacing the oil pump. I will say, I'm glad I pulled this motor. If you're doing this conversion and you're going to the standard volume, high pressure oil pump, there's literally no way to get this pickup tube down so that you can get the oil pump out. I'm not saying it can't be done, but to do it right and shim that oil pump, putting it back on, you're gonna have the oil pickup tube, oil pump pickup tube, kind of dictating where the pump's gonna go. And if you look at the windage tray, those two nuts right there that are loose, both those nuts are holding that tube. So there's no way you can pry down on it to get that tube out of there. So definitely worth taking it out. There's the old timing chain cover that's not gonna get reused. Like I said, nice and clean. Same thing with the DOD solenoid valley plate. It's all in awesome shape. There's the old cam. The cam was in great shape. Oil pan. I am gonna delete the cooler. It's not really a cooler. It's for fuel economy. It's to heat the oil up faster. I guess if you're starting your car up in the winter, I don't. It's a summer car anyway. It would be nice to get that oil temperature hotter, faster, to get the oil up on the top of the top of the heads, top of the motor. My thought is, I mean, if you're waiting for coolant temp to get up to heat up the oil, the engine's been running for some time. I mean, how much of a difference is that really gonna make unless you're going out there whacking the throttle 10 minutes after you're running the car? So that to me, this was all for fuel economy. That's coming off. I'm gonna delete that so I don't have any issues down the road with any leaks. Here, like I said, here's the old oil pump, which these are really good oil pumps because they're high volume and high pressure for the DOD. So actually reusing these isn't a bad idea. This one's got 100K on it, so I am gonna replace it. A big reason why a lot of people lose oil pressure is this O-ring right here dries up and gets hard. And this one's actually in decent shape. It still has some elasticity to it. It isn't hard. The one that was on my wife's truck for sure was brittle. I could squeeze it and it would crack. But I don't know if you can see that in the video. It's not round anymore. It is flat. So I mean, this could have been leaking and would start leaking soon. So just this O-ring alone was worth dropping that oil pan and getting this oil pump out of the way. It does only use the pickup tubes right here. The oil O-ring goes right here. There is only one bolt that holds it. There isn't two, but that bolt is on the inside, deep inside the oil pan. So how you would get that out, even dropping that oil pan down enough to work in there, I don't know how you could do it without taking the oil pan out, which requires in the car to cut the cross member right under the oil pan and then fabbing up some new mounting plates so that it's removable in the future, which I guess is a good idea, but for the extensive amount of work that we're doing here, it's just yank the motor. One thing the kit doesn't come with, which the video I'm making, I would count this as your kit going forward. You definitely want a new cam plate. These wear, not only that, this gasket, the sealing surface, isn't like a thick O-ring. I mean, it's super thin. So for that to get flat and stay flat, I would never reuse that. But again, that's just me. There'll be a newer style cam tensioner that you'll see. But yeah, so going forward, I'm just going to, I'm still waiting for some parts to come in. That's why I'm going to make this a part one. Kick that out there. And I'm going to start working on cleaning this this block up. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. It's going to be fun.